Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Paul, welcome to the show today. First of all, can you just take me right back? Where did the entrepreneurial spirit come from? Yeah, talk about school or early days. Just take me back. Paint the picture.
I think, if I'm honest, it's probably always been there. In terms of when I was really, really young, I used to get in trouble a lot because I was always trying to take something apart and put it back together again. So from as early as I can remember, and I'm really, really, really young, I'll tell you a funny story in a sec, but effectively what I used to do is try and take anything apart. Christmas presents, toys, furniture in the house. Like, there's a story attached to that. From when I was about 2, I just had this thing about trying to understand how things worked. And I think that was really where it begins, because there's always a trigger to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember my mum tells this story. She says, one day, Paul, we're downstairs and we just hear your feet go across, like, silence. She said, your dad's in the shower or the bath at the time. Don't think we had a shower when I was that young. And downstairs you come, then your dad comes out, and then you just heard this big crash. And I'd basically got into his room and unscrewed the chest of drawers, but it was still standing. So as he's got into the chest of drawers, he pulled it out, the whole lot's collapsed. And that was the sort of thing that I used to get up to. But I always remember, trying to take watches apart, anything. Yeah, that was my thing. I was always trying to understand how things worked.
Yeah. And that is sort of business, isn't it? Understanding business and understanding what motivates people, whether that's your customers, whether it's your team, taking things apart and checking it and rebuilding it. That is business. So, talk to me about your first sort of experience and stepping into growing a business.
Yeah. So I suppose really my first foray into further automating or understanding stuff was, I actually didn't finish my A-levels, right? So I don't have a degree. I didn't do my A-levels. I got a summer job in a stockbroker's. And whilst I was at that job in Canary Wharf, recruitment consultant calls me up and says, do you want to interview at JP Morgan? Of course, we all know who that is. And I said, of course I want to go and interview at JP Morgan. And so I go down there and I met this guy. And funny enough, that was 28 years ago, maybe now. And Martin Fenton was the guy who was the manager there. I still remember him clear as day. And he said to me, look, you're not the typical kind of person we hire. We definitely do the grad thing. But considering you're temping where you are, why don't you come and temp for me for a couple of months? And if you fit the bill, we'll bring you in. At the end of the month, I got my offer, permanent offer. And I was like, I'm not looking back to school anymore. I'm definitely going down the investment banking route. And then about 7, maybe 8 weeks later, I fully automated my job. So we used to basically do this inter-account reconciliation for JP, where they tax arbitrage trading through the 3 entities that they own. And we would just get these reams of paper and you'd have to tick everything back, find any breaks if there was one. And this was just 2 systems. And I said, Martin, this is not a good use of the time. There's 5 of us here doing this every day.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what do you think we should do? I said, it's 2 systems. Surely they just need to kind of reconcile themselves. If there's a break, it'll tell you what the number is on what account. If there's no break, there's no report and there's no wastage of paper. So he said, okay, go and find out how much that's going to cost, because if it's costing money, I'm not paying for it. And I went upstairs, spoke to the IT people, and it was like 2 hours worth of work. And we saved about 54 man hours a week. And from there, I was about, you know what? I kind of like this automation stuff where the technology does the thing and we don't do the bad thing, right? And so it all started there. And progressively, Morgan Stanley, the UBS, Credit Suisse, the big banks that I transitioned through, I was always asked to work on some sort of technology project, but I was never the owner of it. And then when I finally did get to UBS, which was probably around 2005, 2006, they were I wanted to go and work in Change the Bank, which was early FinTech, because
Right.
I could see all these legacy banking systems. They were no good. They was always trying to like bolt something together. It was a proper Frankenstein's machine to keep the banks running.
Yeah.
And I just was like, there has got to be a better way, but I wanted to be part of that. And they said no. So I said, but I've been project manager here of a different project, and I've done it consecutively throughout my career. Why no? You don't have a degree. I said, but I don't have a degree and I'm here already. And it was like this, they just wanted me to stay where I was. So basically I flipped out. And funnily enough, I didn't start FinTech consulting straight away. I actually opened a publishing business because I'm a really strong writer. Like I loved writing poetry and stories when I was young, was creative, used to create like all sorts of random things, but mainly around poetry. That was like a strong way of me probably getting through my parents' breakup, actually. That's probably where it all started. But I lent into that, but I was also very much aware of where I lived, which was sort of like Chigwell Loughton in Essex there. There was like these free lifestyle magazines going around, and I always used to think they're not really that great, full of advertorials and not a lot of readable content. Little did I know, but that's how those businesses survived, right? I'm just like, we can do this better. But and to a degree, I kind of was a little bit innovative. They had these big A4 things. I got this, came straight in with this handbag size magazine because I was like, well, people don't carry A4 around, but if I can put it in my bag, I can definitely carry that, right? So straight away, the pages became smaller, and I had like the big yacht companies in there and like jewelers from LA. I just went abroad and got like this really good content, and then I started to realize that not a lot of these companies, these shops that I was selling into, had good e-commerce. And so we started to retail e-commerce through the publishing business. And then I think 6 months in, it's how quick it was. 6 months in, I had a really bad month on the sales, probably summer, June time, right? No one wants to advertise, we're all going on holiday. And so I started selling e-com and realized that the money was in e-com and not in retail. And we flipped the whole business model, got rid of the magazine, and then ran forward. And, you know, quite quickly, people like Nike, Sky. I worked with Adidas, worked with some really big brands, as well as, you know, small indie brands as well. So that was kind of how it happened. And then we took on a client who was, not, I wouldn't say it's a friend from the pub. And they were building an app. And the app was a gaming app. They had like Alan Brazil involved. It was a sports game. And they asked us to build it, and we did. And then the guys that were the investors said, look, can we buy you out of your business and you just build this thing for us? You and your dev team, that's like what we want. So I was like, yeah, for sure. Obviously, you know, the agency life can be up and down. So I was like, this is guaranteed income for a while. And so we did it. And I think about 18 months later, they ran out of funding. But we'd run into some problems with it because it was a game where it asked you 3 questions. Can you imagine having a mobile app game which only asks you 3 questions a day? It's like no engagement there whatsoever. And it was very much about you versus your peers. So you sign up with Facebook, and then it knows like your age, your sex, your gender, whatever, and all of that stuff. And then you were able to just answer these questions. So for example, it might be, does Cristiano Ronaldo wear the number 7 boot? And you could kind of say yes or no, but you could say no, but most people would say yes. Or you could say yes, but most people would say no. So it's really weird, but you could kind of answer wrong but still be right. And then it was all about like your peer groups. How do you compare against your peers? And you won these coins. And then Adam Brazil would ask like the question of the day, and then that would be involved as well. But there was no engagement. So I said, look, you need to do more here. So they came up with more games rather than kind of like expanding this into multiple sports questions across the day. They came up with more games, and it just didn't work. But I did feel that it was more of a research tool in the end. I said, look, guys, and you know, by this time in my own career, I'd been speaking to people like Dan Humby that were running Tesco Club Card and things like that. And I said, these are the guys you want to go and pitch this to, because imagine putting this in Tesco Club Card and saying, do you like this product? Yes or no? Would you buy it? Yes or no? Then all of a sudden, you know where to launch it, where you're most likely to hit the most sales straight away. And I just saw, strategically, that was the best use case for this thing, which they didn't agree. And I think that they missed an opportunity. But I'm going to say that, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I was always right.
It's what we do.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. So what happened to it? Did it completely disappear then, the game?
Yeah, they kind of let it go. I think Ross went to work in a broker somewhere back into finance, but I felt like they missed a real solid opportunity, because if you look at the world we live in today, the amount of data people want, if they would have pursued a data tool instead of trying to, like, you can pivot with tech, just pivot if this is a better case. Instagram's a blinding example of that. It wasn't Instagram sending pictures in the beginning, right? It was like sending messages, replacing like the telegram, right? And then all of a sudden it was like, no, we're going to do pictures instead. So pivot if the pivot's right. But I think a lot of people kind of got a bit frustrated with it, and I think the investors were a bit itchy about putting more money in. But ultimately, we'll all look back and say, did we do this right? Did we do it wrong? We did it wrong. I mean, that's the end of the day, right? It's no longer here, so it was wrong.
No. But there's always a learning to take, isn't there? I think even when something fails, you can always learn from it. So how did that catapult you forward? What did you learn from that took you forward into your next venture?
Yeah, I actually learned a lot, right? So understanding the problems of building tech when you've got a lot of decision makers asking you to build it. You've got 7, 8 investors, a couple of them are silent, but you still have those quarterly meetings where you go and you see them and they're all giving you their opinion of what you should be doing. And so stakeholder management became evident. Team management, obviously you ground more and more away with running teams and dev teams. And I didn't know that at the time. I was just setting myself up for where I wanted to be in the future. But I think there's a loophole here that I haven't mentioned, is that when I left school at 16, I might have been 15, I was one of the oldest, that kind of age, went to the careers office, and the internet, the web, websites in particular, were just becoming a thing. And I wanted to go and do that. I was really good at art at school, was really creative. I mean, I got like 97 out of 100 for my art exam or something. And I said, this is what I want to do. But my great aunt was my careers officer. And she was like, no, Paul, you don't want to do that. Your mum and dad work in the bank. You should go and work in the banks. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go and do that then, will I? And so I suppose like that turned me off. But what's funny is I came full circle and after that whole episode there of, forget the e-commerce piece, but just going through the app, you've had an understanding of what a good build looks like, how to create good UX. So, UX, team dev, team management, stakeholder management, all these things, but also all of that experience in banking, that, what don't you like about the world? I am definitely not political. I've got good, strong political views about, life, but I don't agree with like internal politics. You've got to be in my clique, my gang. I'm only going forward in my career if I like these certain people. And so that went for and against me when I was in the bank, because I was very much, on a Monday, I'd have all the guys from the post room around me talking football, which people on my floor thought was a bit weird, but I didn't ever see people's earning levels as denoting their worth. You have a good conversation with people. Yeah. So you do that. But then on the other side of it, directors would come and ask me to go and do big things, which annoyed middle management because they kind of got cut out. And someone would come directly to me and say, yeah, we're just taking Paul and we're going to go and do this thing, right? And so there was that divide created, but I think I also liked it because I think part of me likes being contentious.
That slightly rebellious part of you.
Yeah, I like to challenge the status quo, right? Because, I mean, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but there's been so many things that thought leaders or apparent thought leaders are running around saying at the moment that no one's changed the narrative since the year 2000. And so how can we be a thought leader 23 years later shouting out the same narrative? Those kind of things really annoy me because, people in the world can never really understand how far back they are if we are still churning out the same stuff, if we're not really out in front saying, look, you might be 2 furlongs back here and you've got a lot to do to catch up. When we still churn the same stuff out and we're really near, it makes people who work in companies that don't want to move, it makes it really easy for those companies to just say, well, we don't need to move, do we? And then all of a sudden there's problems, right? Because the culture of the business, especially at a leadership level, doesn't align with where we're going. We talk about millennials, Gen Z, what do they want? And everyone's like, oh my God, we've got to solve for those. And you're like, yeah, but you've got people running really traditional business models at the top. Then you're talking about this layer of digital transformation that everyone wants because they've got to suit these people underneath. And those 3 things are always at odds. And it's, maybe 200-300 companies a year that we all use as case studies that do it really well, and no one else is doing it really well. And yet, how many millions of businesses are there in the world?
Yeah. There is definitely a disconnect, isn't there, between, I guess, the way businesses operate. And that is that, I mean, so much has changed in 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, since we were at school sort of 30 odd years ago, or 25, 30 years ago, so much has changed. And the internet has massively changed that. And a lot of companies haven't actually taken advantage of the situation they're in. And do you think they're just going to get left behind?
I think, like, considering I work in FinTech and I come from a banking background, I think this is a really good, like, space to stay in with this conversation, because you had all these traditional banks, right? Straight up banking models, not really giving the public what they deserve, not even what they want, it's what they deserve. And all of a sudden, all these fintechs come out and they're like, no, we can do this better. We don't need these archaic infrastructures. And the truth is, the word I just landed on, infrastructure, is what prohibits those big banks, because the infrastructure is technical and people. And people, no matter what you do, will always be the problem. The tech's not a problem. You give the tech the right information, it will push out the right answers. You give it the wrong information, it'll push out the wrong answers. You put a load of people in a room, and all of a sudden you've got too many contradicting opinions, and you get inertia, and then no one does anything. And I think that's what happens. It's like too many people with legacy ideas. I'm going to leave this thing that I do is my legacy here, and that's where I get my name remembered. And I think that goes right up to like Downing Street in the current world that we live in, right? It's everyone's about their legacy and what they deliver. And I just feel like what FinTech has done is like, it's tried to bank the unbanked. It's tried to give everyone in the furthest, remotest parts of the regions of the world ways to engage with technology and give them the ability to bank properly and trade. And I think that's what I love about this space. Yeah, sure, on the more corporate B2B side, there's always going to be a need to be enabled. So businesses need enabling, and the technology will do that. And AI, which I'm sure we'll touch upon, will further enhance that, right? But what I like about the industry we live in is very traditional business models, very traditional approaches with very old people at the top that have got a very traditional, long-lived way of doing business. Yeah. And so if you think about it, right at the top, you've got maybe 24 people sitting on the board. And under some of these companies, they've got hundreds of thousands of people and many talented, progressive, thoughtful people working in those organizations being hampered because actually at the top, they're like, no, we don't want to do that. Or no, I'm not going to do this. The next person who comes in to be chairman, it can be his problem or her problem. Do you know what I mean? And so you get those internal politics. And that's why I didn't like it, because like all of that just frustrates me. I'll end up leaving, and that'll be, I'll leave because I just can't work in those kind of environments. And I'm like one of those, what do you call it, like a stallion. You catch me, like you've got to be able to let me go at the same time. Otherwise, you try and peg me in, I'm going to start kicking the fence down, right? That's just what happens.
Do you think at times people at the top, and you're right, that humans are always the issue in this? Is it that people right at the top, probably because of a generational thing, an age thing, because they don't understand, then therefore they don't want to make that decision? What I'm trying to do, I'm not trying to relieve them of responsibility, but do you think they just, no, I'm not interested in looking at that because I don't understand it? Is that then their responsibility to understand it? Or do you think you should, throw them a lifeline that actually they don't get it? I can understand why they don't want to step forward with that bit of technology.
Matt, I think that's a really good question. And I think we could probably debate that for a good few hours if we wanted to. So I'll try and keep this succinct, because if we look at a lot of businesses, right, and anyone that watches this that kind of is in a traditional business, anyone who's at kind of like director level, and to a degree, some of middle management, they get a little bit lofty. And so they sort of step away from people management. It's like, I don't manage people anymore. I'm just in charge of these managers. But those managers are people. And then if you're sort of coaching these managers to be more like you, lofty and aloof, then you end up building a whole layers and layers and layers and layers of senior management all the way up to the board, where everyone's a little bit like, well, it's not really my problem, and it's really difficult. And I feel like that's what happens in some of these big corporate structures. It's not they don't understand. I think they start thinking that it's such a vast undertaking. Can you imagine sort of taking a 40,000, 50,000 employee sort of investment bank and saying all of a sudden we need to just completely shift direction.
Yeah.
I mean, if
that's
I
a
just say
pivot,
that to
isn't
you,
it?
imagine being at the top. I'm like responsible for turning this ship around and like reorganizing it and refitting it with a lot of people that know how to work in a digitalized environment.
Yeah.
That's scary. I think that's really
Yeah.
scary. So you find a really strong initiative, could be, health and well-being. We're going to be like one of the
Yeah.
best health and well-being banks. I'm going to get, but I'm still getting employee performance. I'm still getting enhanced ROI. I'm still getting incremental increases in revenues because of this new thrust and vigor and energy that the employees bring. So they focus on doing things like that because it's easier. And I
Yeah.
feel like the reason you see these piecemeal transitions is simply because of that reason. It's only where you'll have progressive management and it becomes maybe departmental when these things happen. And there's a lot of emphasis, as you probably know, on marketing, sales and customer success to align revenue operations.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really easy one to focus on, right? But actually there's ops, there's legal, there's finance. People keep talking about these three teams in front that are kind of the solution, and they're not. The whole organization has to build into that model. So, it's a good question because you can argue the for and against. I feel
Yeah.
for is there, and the against is, well, yeah, some people are just bad. They're just
Yeah.
they're just not going to do it.
Do you think sometimes it's not always that the other thing's easier to do? There's just less risk.
That one.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I must admit I can picture it now. I'm forward thinking, I'm ambitious, but actually, if I was in charge of 50,000 people and it was some big magic, some big digital transformation we were going through, and I'm 5 years off retiring, I'd probably be like, you know what, I can just see my pina colada in the distance there. I'm just going to hold out for 5 years and leave it to someone else. Whereas when you're a smaller company, you can pivot quite quickly. So when they're looking at something, right, actually, we do need to make some changes. Actually, we're going to implement a new health and well-being system, which doesn't necessarily have the same impact on affecting the customers. It doesn't, but it might get a little bit more out of the team. So yeah, it's a real challenging thing. But then do you think then maybe open up opportunities for disruptive industries? So the old, say maybe the original banks aren't going to be able to change very quickly because they're so big, but it does allow a smaller company to come in and actually be a disruptor.
Yeah, because I honestly, and I've been saying this for a while now, I honestly feel even some of the most progressive companies, they want same, but different. They all say they want the big change. They want to leapfrog. They need the digital transformation, but they don't. What they want is a little bit more optimization, a few more pieces of tech that work better together, and actually a transition like that. And so they say they want different, but they want the same. It's a bit same, but just a little bit different. And everyone else wants change. And that's the difference, right? When you want change, that's when someone says, do you know what? Like, I'm going to disrupt something. Like, not to plug here, and shameless I will be.
No, go for it.
We've looked at the agency space, right? And we've looked at, and you've probably done this yourself, you look at there's some really bad actors in our space. Like, there are some people that I say steal a living, selling themselves as an agency, consistent bad results, and basically just take the money until the next person comes along. Yep. And I said to myself, we've got AI, right? And for me, I know a lot of people are worried, will it take jobs? Will it take jobs? It will if you're not performing well. I mean, ultimately, if you don't perform well and AI is an opportunity to optimize, I think people will do it. But also remember, if you're performing well, it's probably easier to keep you doing your job performing well than bringing some wholesale new technology that no one's still quite sure of what it's doing yet. So that's the juxtaposition there. Yeah. But we looked at what AI should be good for, and I think it should be really good at analyzing data, because what else do you need it for other than that, right? So all of a sudden I start to say, well, if I'm a CMO or I'm an agency owner, building strategy is really complex, right? And strategy is yet built off SEO data and ad data and all of this other data. And if you had the right language model querying this data, well, wouldn't it be easier for you to say, look, why don't you forget about your data and analytics? We'll take care of that, and we'll just send you every month the answers you need, what lever to pull, whether it's in ads, whether it's in SEO, whether it's technically optimizing your website. And I just present them to you, and you just have to do them. And that's what we're building. So we're building a platform called Lever. It does that. Yep. And we've got somewhere between 1,000 agencies signed up. I think we've got like 50 CMOs. We've got HubSpot signed up, SEMrush, and Clarity. So we've got some really big. We're not even at tech yet. This is all
No.
concept. It's just me talking to people, and we've had one offer to be bought already, and we haven't even built the tech, right? So this is where we are. Everyone sort of said this is the space that you need to get into. So
Yeah.
when you go back to enablement and disruptive, I'm only bringing more surety to an industry that thrives on data. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
Yeah. Data is what
revolutionary.
leads the strategy.
Yeah.
But it's taking the AI and actually using it to everyone's benefit. I think I'm in agreement. You know, AI can be a fantastic tool, and actually, if it can speed up some of the mundane tasks that a lot of us have to do, and studying the data and putting it in an Excel spreadsheet, you know, like, actually, if you can automate a lot of that, which is clearly what you've done throughout your, career,
Yeah.
it fits, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we definitely see it as a tool. I traditionally, really, what I love doing is putting tech, marketing, and sales together. I really love that true product led growth. And so this July we shifted from what we would call a traditional agency model to it probably looks a bit more like a SaaS consultancy business, which is fine. But we've kind of got 6 products that we have. Right, that's it. There's no PPC, websites, blah, 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 and all the other billion services that you can offer. It's like we do these 6 things. We do them really, really well. One of them is my own go-to-market strategy called ARISE, which is an acronym for Assess, Research, Ideate, Strategize, Execute. Got a trademark gone through on that, so that's ours completely. And then we started looking at, well, how under PLG in the tech world, you're supposed to be able to experience you without paying you, without speaking to you and all of that. So we were like, how do we do that? And so we started building these assessments. And I'm not talking about a quiz, take a quiz. I'm talking a true assessment. We built our first one for product marketing, which we launched. And it literally questions you about your strategy, scores you against different elements like the strategy part, the positioning, the messaging, the storytelling, all of that stuff, scores you against how you answer, and then serves you the content to close the gaps according to how you answered each section, right?
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of that content's what we've written on our blog. You know, we are experts in this, so we're serving you the content you need that we've produced, further enhancing and reinforcing our position as the people that you can trust, but also saying, well, look, if you want to try and solve that yourself, go ahead and do it. Like the way we write our copy, use it. Not, this is the theory, now you need to talk to us. We're like, this is how you do it. If you're a doer, do it. If you want to use someone like us, you'll come and see us because you now trust me. And that's always been my attitude. I'm not
100% agree with that. You know, I give away information for free and just charge for implementation. You know, it's, I'm happy to write blogs, do videos, share all of it, because actually you can almost learn anything if we were inclined to. You know, the example I often give is, you know, if I've got a fence down in my garden, in fact, I own a hammer, I own a saw, I can watch a YouTube video telling me how to put up a fence. You know what? I'm not spending my weekend doing that. It's not what I enjoy at time. I'll pay someone else. But if someone else I'd watched them on YouTube, or I'd seen them on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook doing it, and they were local, I'm like, oh, they seem like good people. I'll get them round to do it. And that's, you know, I think one of the major benefits of giving away content. Yeah, because people still won't do it. Just not inclined, haven't got the time. It's not a good use of my time, which does quite lead me on to, you know, because I want to enjoy my weekends. So what do you do outside of work? How do you relax? How do you switch off? Do you?
All right. Well, I've got a 2-year-old daughter, and she definitely fills a gap for me. I used to be really heavily into my sports, so now I just kind of stay fit. I go gym a lot, but Saturday mornings is mine and her time. We go swimming. I like to spend time with her. You know, she's probably like the best thing I've ever created, right? I mean, I'm sure as parents, you know these sort of things, right? And then I've probably spent in the last 2 years somewhere around £1,600 on books. So I'm a reader. Under COVID, I sat 14 certified courses in the second year. In the first year of COVID, I set the courses. The second year, I rebuilt my whole business. I rebuilt out every single playbook that we have. I built them, designed, they can be easily implemented. So what do? I figure out how I can be better at what I do. I love what I do so much, and obviously building another platform, like I love to stay connected to that education.
Yeah.
Like life's a journey. And I didn't even mention, right? I was in Mensa when I was a kid. Mensa used to come to my primary school, and I used to have weekly Mensa tests, spelling and maths, right? So I've always been quite intelligent. I sat my exams. I'll say I didn't finish my A-levels, but I'd already sat my exams in year 10 or the fourth year of secondary school. I
Yeah.
did all that. So I didn't lean into that, but I'm very much in the space of we can close so much of the world off by failing to learn. Now, you don't have to be an academic learner or anything like that,
Right.
but like even if you just learn about places to go, because the more you open that opportunity up to yourself, the more options you have. But I feel like I'm the best version of myself when I have some sort of blend between my family time and my time. I support a football team and I have a season ticket. I'm not going to get into namings of that because, everyone likes to have their own football team, and mine's definitely not Arsenal, just to say that. And I like to go and have that 2-3 hours once a week where I don't think about anything. And I've got a couple of strangers that I met because I only got a season ticket this season. And I
Yeah.
go and meet these strangers and we have loads of fun and we're just like football friends. And
Yeah.
I've dropped life. Like life gets dropped.
Yeah.
So yeah, travel, 100%. I love the south of France. I love going far-flung places. I went to Thailand on my own and just chilled out for a bit. I've got family in America. We opened up Chicago as well. So it is a fluctuation between what is really personal is probably the holidays, the family time, and my love of whiskey. That's probably really personal for me as well.
Yeah.
So I collect whiskey and pop art.
Yeah.
So I kind of invest in that. It's really weird. I'll have like an open bottle of whiskey that I can just get through. I've got these other bottles that I just look at and I wouldn't even consider.
Wouldn't touch them.
They are really my investments. But yeah, that's it really. And I think my other passion is teaching. I've done a lot of stuff in prisons and with really like disadvantaged children, and I like to kind of go in there and show them what the world can be. I come out of East London, and you wouldn't have said back in when I was a kid that East London was a place that was highly productive, and yet a lot of my mates became traders and got on to open their own businesses. So I think that generationally there was like, no one wants to be a postman anymore with the guaranteed pension. We want big money, fast cars, because the 80s sort of brought Ferraris and all of the flash American TV, which then governed how we grew up, right? And we grew up with this desire to want more and have more, and that meant that you had to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want more, you got to do more. And has that been one of the big drives? I mean, what gets you up then? Is it that drive for, you're obviously constantly reinventing the wheel, or not reinventing the wheel, refining the wheel. And I loved the way you said there about constant learning. In fact, I'm a lifelong learner. I treat every day, like a sponge. I would never even try to admit, or declare that I know everything. Of course you don't. Just keep learning, even if it's not something directly within your workspace. I'm just interested in life, and conversations like this. I'm just interested in people and hearing stories, and I will take something away from every one of these conversations. But what is that drive? Do you think it is just that? Do you just want more?
I'll tell you what, right? And we touched upon this before we got started. I honestly think it's fear. And it's really weird, right? Because you look at business owners, entrepreneurs, and you go, oh God, they're really driven and they get all these things. They get the holidays, they get the watches, the whatever they get, right? That you're jealous of or you want. And actually, I would say the biggest driver for most entrepreneurs outside of the passion for the industry will be the fear of failure. And I think that for me is the honest truth. I just couldn't see myself failing. I always said, if the world was ending and you've got a horse and I need to eat it, I'm gonna have the horse. Right? I can't fail. It's just something in me that, well, of course I fail, but you said something really interesting earlier, which is if you don't learn from it, then it is a failure. But if you learn something from it, it's just a lesson, right? There's no. I've tried really hard to come away from this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. This is an outcome, and what I've tried to do is become better at going back through the decisions that I made, because there's
Yeah.
no good or bad luck. If you're on a good stream of good decisions, they say you create your luck, but actually all your good decisions led you into this thing, and that's where you landed the thing. When you can deviate or you don't listen to yourself, and I know it's really hard because there's so much noise in the world. And there's so many like fraudsters selling you like $1 million opportunities on Instagram, as you said, right? When actually you are the funnel, you spending that 27 quid, then the 297 and then the 497. You see the funnels all the time, and it's like people just making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
Selling to people that think there's a quick fix, and there isn't.
No, actually, that's really true. There isn't a quick fix. A business is a journey. It's a tough journey, and I think that not wanting to fail, whatever that means to different people, actually just to get up and keep going. Because in business, you get knocked down lots, and I don't mean whether that's personally or physically or just with a business deal or a funding or a product that didn't work. You do get knocked down lots, and I think entrepreneurs have that unique sort of side to them of just going, I've got to keep going. Now, at times, I don't know whether that's always mentally best for us, but what do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of people that say a good businessman doesn't take business personally, and I don't think I agree with that. I think that if it's not personal, and there's two things to this. Let me be clear. There's it being personal and being married to the outcome, or it's being personal and being very well researched and defined about your approach. And they're two kind of different things there. And for me, I say it's personal. It's all personal to me. I like to compete. I don't agree with a lot of what goes on in the world about not competing and all that stuff. I think we all need to find where our strengths are. And sometimes it feels like when we talk about like not competing, we're not looking for what makes us different and where we excel. We're just trying to be too much of the same. And the world needs people that are different. These, scientists, entrepreneurs, and, all sports people, all these people need to be pushed from a young age. And so I think I've gone way off the question there, but I feel, ultimately, yeah, I did. I lost track of the question there.
Yeah, but okay, taking it back then, because I think there's some stat, isn't there? I mean, most small businesses don't pass year one, and actually 90 something% of businesses don't hit year 5. And what do you feel do you think that's the business? Do you think it's the person? Do you think it's the market?
So again, coming back to sort of SaaS, my industry, it's McKinsey posted the numbers. It's 86% of companies do not go beyond year 3. And that is our mission, to help more companies go beyond year 3. And so Arise that I mentioned earlier, when you look at what companies need to do to launch a product or a service, right? There's not a lot of difference between the two. Excuse me. When you look at what needs to be done, technical co-founders will tend to be companies where the struggle is the hardest. If they don't have a marketing or sales-led co-founder, if you got 2 technical people, it's not that they're not competent. It isn't. They're actually the driving force behind the business. They're engineering the software. They've got a vision, but often they don't have the commercial understanding or the emotional understanding of how marketing and sales work. And it also, in those kind of businesses, you also see the highest churn in marketing and sales, because you end up with a technical founder that says, the product's brilliant, why can't you sell it? Right? And so what happens is there's not strong positioning, there isn't strong messaging. And what you end up seeing, and in services or tech, you'll always see, we do this, we're good at that, and we do this. And do you know what? You buy things. So what? How do you change my world? Where's the transformation for me? What is the opportunity here? How long is it going to take me to get there? What risks are there? Who do you compete with? How do I evaluate the 2 of you or 3 of you or 5 of you? And so when you can help companies shift really early into, you aren't the hero of the story.
No.
Because founders are ego-driven, massive egomaniacs, right? And it's what they do. And that's why they invest in PR and all these other things, because it's about building their profile. And actually, no disrespect to any founder, because the journey's tough. a lot of the time you forget that the people you're building it for are the people that buy it. And all they're really interested in is how clear can you communicate the value of what you do, and how easy can you make it for me to understand how, if I invest in this thing, service, product, whatever it is, person, coach, what is my expected timeline of transformation? How much implementation time is there? How many people need to be doing that? How much capital risk? How much political risk? Me, C-suite in a big organization buying from you? What's the risk to me personally of buying from you? These are the things you need to address. And they don't, because they won't have learned it till too far, and they would have deviated. Design partners, building features or changing services because this one big corporate says this is what we need. Like, these are the things that happen. And so we're trying to solve that. And we're doing it in two ways. We're building out a accelerator program called Strategy Supercharged, and it is post go to market. So we're not in the market for incubation and acceleration where you're talking to people that are still talking about positioning. Once you come out of that and you'll be left on your own, that's when we want to pick up as many companies as we can to really rigorously get them to jump down and double down on this sort of stuff. And then the other by is just by making all these tools available to people and then shouting really loud that these are available to you. You can find these things for free. You don't always need to pay for it. Always try and make the smartest decision, right? And so, the finances have got to be right. If you need to bring coaching in, people that watch Billions, you bring a person like Matt in. He might not be there full time, but if you want to invest in success, don't just invest in marketing and sales. Invest in people, and actually that could be coaching at the top level. Maybe you might have managers that need to be better skilled or better people. All those things, you bring other people in to help the business grow, and I think that's where people need to kind of sort of maybe sometimes step back, because I think they're just too close to the product, and that's where technical founders will always be. So that's where I think the problem lies.
Yeah, I'd love the mention about ego, and I think actually for business owners, that can be a real challenge to understand. Actually, you've got a major skill set in some part, but there will be areas where you're lacking. Paul, I've loved our conversation today. Really, really enjoyed that. Can you just leave me with one final tip? Give me the shortest tip ever. Someone thinking of starting a business, what's the one thing that they need to know?
Don't stop learning. Never stop learning.
Don't stop learning.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.